a number of people with important perspectives and strong opinions to give us their thoughts on what we've heard and to start the conversation. Then we're looking for you to be involved in the conversation as well. So being a part of this group is, to my direct left is Abdul Samaki, who is the Resident Services Coordinator for the Community Builders at Lydenwood Apartments. Next to him is Tina Cody, who's the Administrator of the Franklin Regional Transit Authority. Next to Tina is Linda Dunleavy, who is the Executive Director of the Franklin Regional Council of Governments. And next to Linda is Claire Higgins, who's the Executive Director of Community Action. And so what I'd like to do is start with Tina to give her impressions of what she's heard and how she sees things either working, not working, or what needs to be tweaked.
Right now in the FRTA, just to give you kind of an overview of what we do, we have 41 towns within our transit authority. We're the most rural, geographically transit agency in the state. We cover approximately 1,100 square miles with all of the towns that we serve. With that said, we have 6 fixed bus routes that probably touch upon 11 or 12 of those towns. So we do have a huge gap in transportation in terms of the population that we serve, where it needs to go, getting people to work, school, medical appointments, those sorts of things. There are other programs in addition to the fixed route that we offer through the state. There's a program, if individuals are on Mass Health and they're eligible, they certainly can get medical transportation to and from where they need to go, whether it's from Greenfield to Greenfield, Greenfield to Boston. As long as they're approved within the state, that's something that we can provide transportation for. That program right there accounts for about $3.2 million of our annual budget. Our annual budget overall is $6 million. So when you take that out, the $3 million that we're left with to provide transportation to a very large population of low income and definitely transit challenged individuals, it's a lot of work for us that we have to complete. We are trying our best to look for innovative ways to come up with meeting some of those challenges. We've recently extended our evening service within Greenfield. I think we're operating till 8:50 at night. But again, our ridership has gone down by about 16%, and our fares have gone down by 19%. We did reduce our fares from, some of the routes were $1 all the way up to $3.50. We reduced it so it's one fare at $1.25 for each rider. Some individuals qualify for half fare, that's 60 cents. But again, we're not meeting all of the needs of everyone, and it's a very big task that we're challenged with. So in listening to Matt and trying to understand the program that he has, we have a few challenges, I think, here. One being that under Mass General Laws 161B, we have to hire a management company. The T can go ahead and hire whomever they'd want to operate their service. Each RTA in the state has to hire a management company. So I can't just go out and hire someone off the street to drive a vehicle, pay them a certain wage. We have union operators, there are benefits, those types of things. So the cost is a little bit more. But with Bridge, a possibility of something like that could work. It's hard to tell because we don't have a lot of the technologies that some of the bigger cities do with the smartphones. So it's something that we'd have to explore a little bit more. I don't know if there's any questions,
Okay.
but.
Well, let's start there, and let's go, Linda, we'll go to you, and then we'll go down and around, okay?
Good morning. Can you hear me? Let me start by talking about butter. Julia Child, one of my heroes, she said that never use margarine, always use butter. Just if you have to, use less of it or eat less of it, but always use butter. Thank you, Leanne. One of the projects of the Franklin Regional Council of Governments was to work with partners around the state on the creation of the Massachusetts State Food Plan, which looked at local food production, distribution, and access. And what I want to talk about quickly is access and local food access. And with that, I'm going to include education. And one of the things that we found in our research was that local food isn't always easy to access. And you would quickly say that, oh, well, that is obviously true in inner cities. But it is also true in rural areas. While we have lots of farmers markets, they often often are open on Saturdays. Tina's funding constraints are such that she truly cannot provide weekend service. So if you don't have access to a vehicle, you also don't have access to a farmer's market. So how are we going to get local food, which the research also shows that when you buy local food that's in season, it's cheaper or competitive with imported food from Argentina and Mexico and California. So how do we do a better job of bringing more local food into our grocery stores so everyone can access it? And wouldn't it be amazing if during asparagus season, instead of having the option of Sunderland or Hadley asparagus plus Argentinian asparagus, we only had the choice of Sunderland and Hadley asparagus. And so working with our grocery stores and working with our farmers, we really need to think about how we expand access to local food. And moving to education really quickly, the other thing that the state food plan found was that people really are so distant from land and from farming that they don't know how to cook, number one. And number two, they don't understand the seasonality of fruits and vegetables. And so that if we can get people more educated on how to cook, and hopefully in every program that we offer, Claire's programs, we've talked about that in your building. We talked about Community Action having a food kitchen, an educational center to teach people healthy eating, fresh eating, local eating, and teaching people about seasonality, because that's when local food is cheaper and accessible. Moving to transportation, I'm going to expose my deepest, darkest fear, which is that I am going to reach an age or a tenure at the Council of Governments when I no longer can be innovative and think outside the box. And Susan brings Matt George to Greenfield a few months ago, and like it totally happened. But what Matt has done is really rethink how transportation is offered. He has combined the idea of fixed route transportation with demand response and finding a way to get to the people where they are and bring them to the place where they need to be. It's an unbelievably great model. What we have is the constraints of federal funding formulas and federal funding prescribed ways of how Tina can spend her money, and likely we are facing a future where there will even be less federal funding for transportation, especially public transportation. So how can we rethink how we do transportation and how we provide transportation and how we reach the people that need transportation? It's a daunting task because I think it starts at the federal government, and I think we have to get to the Federal Transit Administration and then get into MassDOT and then bring it local. And that's what's so beautiful about what Matt is doing, is he's thinking outside the box within the system. And he's bringing his product to the states and to the federal government and asking them to rethink how we provide public transportation, which is, I think, how we bring it here. And then I think, that's an awesome project. I want to work on that, and maybe I'm not too old.
Claire?
Good morning. It's still morning, right?
Yes, it is.
It's almost.
It feels a lot.
I was a child care worker for many years. I'm always curious when nap time is. So this was really interesting. First of all, this cookbook is awesome. It's a really, I've been sitting here, It's just, and the idea, and what is so wonderful about this cookbook and about the bridge model is the idea of respect as an integral part about how we think about how we build systems. And this is a respectful cookbook, right? This, you know, usually you buy a cookbook and the beautiful, gorgeous pictures are of things with ingredients that you can't even say, right? And this is written in such a way with beautiful, gorgeous pictures, and it makes you immediately want to go home and cook. I don't really cook, so you may have turned somebody into a cook. That would be kind of interesting to see. We'll see. But so I work at Community Action. We're the anti-poverty agency for Franklin and Hampshire counties. We work with people living with low incomes. We have a food pantry here in Greenfield. We have a food pantry in Shelburne Falls, and we work with the North Quab and with the Franklin County Community Meals Program with the pantry that they have in Orange. We don't have food pantries in Hampshire County because both of the survival centers on either side of the river serve that purpose very well, so we haven't needed to step into that. We see a lot of people at our food pantries all the time here in Franklin County. And, you know, we do a survey every 3 years of our community, and 39% of the people living in Franklin County that answered our survey said they don't have nutritious food all the time. So close to 40% of the people that answered the survey answered the question that Donna asked us. Have you been food insecure? Close to 40% said they have. We have had periods of time, not recently, but over the last couple of years, where we ran out of stuff at the pantry. We ran out of some stuff at the pantry, and I think we still do every once in a while. But, Justin's here as our food pantry director. And so food insecurity here in the Valley is a real thing. And some of the things that have already happened to help ameliorate that are connections with the farmers, so that fresh produce is coming to the pantries. And it's not enough, and it's not all the time, but it's there. Second thing that we've been doing is through our WIC program, connecting people who are receiving WIC to the farmers markets, which is a really powerful thing to do for those families and a very successful thing. And the third thing is our food pantry is a site for Deerfield Foods, which is a relative of Top Box, which is the originating food box program out of Chicago that Matt mentioned. Does that mean we're not doing enough? And I want to just talk for a minute about this, some of the other things that I think we could be doing. We have talked about having a building, and one of the things we would have in there is a kitchen to encourage people to cook together, number one, because that's sort of a basic initial human thing. Like if you go back to cave dwellers, they're cooking together, right? You know, on the pictures on the walls are people cooking and eating together. So to help people learn from each other by cooking and learn about each other by cooking and eating together. And if it works, we'll bring it to the Rust Belt states, and we'll go chat with people out there and see what they're thinking. Second is, I'm worried as I look forward over the next 2 years, how are we going to continue to have food on the shelves in our food pantries, and is there going to be even more demand as things like food stamps come under pressure from expected federal cuts? So we may need to move from some of the stuff we like to do, which is to try to expand opportunity from people, to meeting basic needs, that is, making sure people have food on the table. That, I think there's going to be more pressure over the next couple of years on our food pantries, and we're going to need to think about how we're going to do that. This community is extremely generous to the pantries, but we might need to be asking for even more help to keep the pantry doors open. And I think back to what Linda was talking about, connecting the food supplies locally is going to be an important part of meeting that need over time. So the other thing I want to talk about for a minute is transportation, and I was struck by a statistic in our annual report. By the way, our community, forget what we call it now. I've only been there a few years. Our community needs assessment is on the Community Action website, and you can take a look at it. But some of the transportation indicators are very easy. About over 70% of the people who live in Franklin County own their own car. I think it's even higher than that. But for our respondents that answered our survey, only about 29 or 30% actually owned their own car that was a functioning car, right? So poor people are more dependent on public transportation than everybody else is. And we run an I&R line where people can call in and ask for help. Many of those calls are about transportation, people's individual transportation. How can I get help to fix my car? Can you give me a little money because I'm going to get evicted because I spent the money fixing my car so I could go to work? So there's a whole, the transportation piece is so tied in to people's ability to survive here. And because we're in Western Mass and we don't have ubiquitous transportation like the MBTA has and is developing even more through something like Bridge, the transit cost is high. The transportation tax is high for us. And let me tell you what I mean. If you combine the cost of housing and transportation in Franklin County, moderate income family is paying over 50% of their income on transportation and housing. A moderate income family in Boston is paying more like 40% of their income on transportation and housing because they have the MBTA and they have, that creates a transit subsidy to their cost of living. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, put the math together. This is the rural tax, right? This is the, and we drive it by, so we drive Tina's funding formula by miles and by population and by, I don't know, probably divided by, the square root of how many asparagus is grown in Sunderland, and then they say, here we go. I mean, it's cooked up in some building in Washington with somebody who, rides the metro. And, but it doesn't take into account the equity of the cost to the people who live in the rural region, right? So it looks at a formula that ends up penalizing anybody who's not living in a dense area. And if you look at most of the services that we provide, that's often what happens when you look at these formulas that are number-driven without any qualitative analysis about how they affect the real people living in the community. So, yes, we have to do some work on the local level in terms of food, doing some connections with pantries and leaning more on the community and so on. We still have to do work even more at the state level to look for equity within the transportation formulas. For instance, the MBTA now gets a penny on the sales tax, right? It goes directly into the MBTA. Yeah, good for them. Where's our penny, right? I mean, between the PVTA, which serves the southern part of Community Action's region, and FRTA, which serves the northern part of Community Action's region, both of them are massively underfunded for the needs of the communities. And if we don't figure out this transportation and housing nut for people up here, when you're already at 50+% of your income just on transportation and housing, add childcare. Add the cost of food, add the cost of any of those other costs, and then people say, well, the people who have money say, well, they're not very good at managing their money. Come on. There's not the fixed cost if you're poor eat up over half of your income just right off the bat. So we have to figure out how we're going to manage that. Thank you.
So my name is Abdul, and I work in the housing complex, Leidenwoods in Greenfield. When I listen to Leanne and Matt, and what they've been talking about is basically my everyday life with my work environment. Leidenwoods, if you don't know, is just a housing complex for low-income families of 500 individuals that live together in a 43-acre land. Happened to be just outside of Greenfield while it's in the town of Greenfield. Out of the 500, 200 are 16 or younger, so it's a very young population. And of course, the community builders who is revitalizing and rebuilding Leidenwood would want to see all his individuals that live in Leidenwood to be successful in life and achieve their full potential. That's their mission. But you build the place, bring new houses, and the tenant move in, and then what? In the morning, suddenly you're faced with the reality of what you're gonna eat to stay in that house, and what you're gonna do in that house. and suddenly you're outside of Greenfield, how are you going to get to services? You're thinking low income probably is not going to have his own transportation. We have a few tenants with transportation, but most of them rely heavily on public transportation in order to get to doctor appointment. If they have children, WIC. If they are late in bill payment, they have to make it to the community action. And if they need to go to Social Security's in Holyoke, they have to wait to get into the bus and really travel several hours to get there. The reality of what has been debated here since the morning is my daily life. You have to look at it from senior point of view. We have about 15 seniors, down to children with as young as 2 months ago, the newest born came in Lighting Woods. And there's people who are still expecting, and things rotate from WIC program to adult unemployment, low incomes, to senior issues. And the realities just hit as the day start until we walk out of there. Last night I was with the tenants until 11 p.m. doing coffee chat. You would say, why so late? Because what is happening, no one is really happy to be on public welfare. I invited them to come and speak up for themselves. But as RC, it's not easy to really also describe the reality of life. But all of you who are here that work with services, works in social services, you understand some of the issues. The reality of the issue is when people are on top of each other and the services administration walk out at the end of the day, there is another reality that takes place in Lighting Woods. So here we are, brand new homes, brand new kitchen, lack of transportation. Of course, several efforts has been made until Friday late, 8:40, latest bus on Friday. That's your last bus. You get in, you're back in town. If you're not, you're gonna be walking from maybe Foster's to Lightingwood, 3 miles. And it's not uncommon to see a mother with a 5-year-old walking behind at 9 p.m. getting back to Lightingwood. How do we resolve that is to be able to think outside of the box. So being from Mali, West Africa, of course, all resources are fantastic. So, I just run the food pantry in Lightingwood. It's been there for over 10 years now. 50 families come to the food pantry. But what do they want in the food pantry? It's suddenly a reality that it's hard to talk about. They want ready-to-eat meals. The kitchen skills that Leon talked about suddenly is real. And particularly if you have a new kitchen, modern kitchen, what do you do with that? So we partner with local services like Just Food to start really going down to the nutrition issues. And if I can, Greening Greenfield and other partners to really trying to be real, come and meet the people and go down to the basic skill of kitchen skill. And then what you make. So it resonates within us. And then how do you go from there with the little children? What is your budget? Auto renewal SNAP members to get CSA share. Maybe, but every dime count for a poor or somebody who rely on welfare. So as a resident services coordinator, we just run most of the program because of the difficulty of transportation within the site. So I do food pantry, after school program, youth development, family counseling, mediation, and I would want to send them to CSO, but they have to be on tight schedule to meet the bus over there. They will miss their appointment. It keeps going, almost like a revolving door in the daily reality. So thinking outside of the box and thinking maybe what Matt suggested, in a rural environment, I can see it, but how do we get there if somebody doesn't have a smartphone? How do we use the level of education to be able to plan 2 or 3 hours in advance and make it to a local point and make it to an appointment where you have pending crises? When I say pending crisis, I see myself sitting in my office. Anything can trigger a crisis. Even a simple phone call can just scramble down the day for the family, multiple member families. So I listened to these two ideas. I feel good about the food pantry. I feel good about the programming. I feel good about FRTA doing late night buses. How do we implement it? You cannot easily do groups because so many families have so many issues. There are so many standalone issues that they cannot come together very easily. Then I have to do coffee chat, maybe to take it a little bit and do a referral. And I'm grateful that Greenfield really had a lot of resources for the families. But then what? It becomes suddenly a full-time welfare benefactor to get to the resources. I have families that has 18 services lined up on the sheet. How do you go from there to being sufficient and get off welfare? That is the goal of everybody. It's hard to picture that. So resources that are here, that are in town, are welcome to really look at Leiden Woods has 1/32 of the 16,000 people that live in Greenfield. Because that's what it is, 500 people for 16,000. And resilience, I would say commitment, and hoping that things will get better. But with whatever has happened in this country the last 2 weeks is not really pushing us toward that direction, but you have to brace and see what's going to happen to the welfare services for these families. I would say local. Try to make any reality as local as it is, because behind the word local is really daily life, love of the community, being member or part of something as it is. Local. I think Just Root is our potential solution for local. I think Green in Greenfield is the potential for local. I would say community actions programs, the FRTA, and today putting close to $80 million in that community is local because it's right here, and focusing in getting the kids and the families to use local is our solution. So, thank you.
Before we go to the floor, I'd just like to ask if anybody on the panel would like to comment on anything else that was said on the panel.
There's one thing I want to say. I think we've had this push in this country, with due respect, on this idea of self-sufficiency, but we don't have jobs that give people the ability to support themselves in a life that's completely independent of government support. So I've been thinking more recently about how do we help people live good lives, and jobs are a part of that because work is an important part of people's life. But it may be that the work people do doesn't fully support the cost of the life that they're leading in the community that they're living in. When you're paying over 50% of your income on housing and transportation, it might not quite get you all the way there. But how can we collectively help support people in good lives that include work, community engagement, and an investment on their children so that their lives are better than their parents' lives were. Like, if we can think about that, I think we're going to get a message from Washington about no services for anybody. In the absence of much higher paying jobs, that's simply not going to work. So,
Okay, let's go to the floor. Do we have, Nancy has a mic to bring to you. People should just raise their hands.
Hi, thanks. Lynn Waldron from Greenfield. Couple quick comments. One, I highly recommend a film that was shown for one night only at Amherst Cinema called Forgotten Farms. Mm-hmm. And if you haven't seen it, I think it would be great for the Green in Greenfield film series, about the hidden dairy industry in this area and the demise of the family farm. And I think that they said something in the film that just blew me away, that pretty much every drop of milk that is consumed in this area in the Pioneer Valley is produced by dairy farms in the Pioneer Valley in this region and in New England. So it's just something that those families are really, really struggling, and they're invisible because they're not the foodies. They're not the new young farm apprentices that are starting up these cool little niche farms. They are the backbone of some of this agriculture in this area. So I highly recommend that film as a piece of all of this. And secondly, I don't know where the plans for Greenfield to develop, the internet services and how that's all going to fit in, but I think access to Wi-Fi is another, I think, really critical piece. Internet is expensive, and we have very limited options, and so I'm really interested in our pushing for a really viable and democratizing access to the internet. Thank you.
Could I say one thing about that?
Sure.
I mean, I think it's important to insist on broadband, and I've been thinking about this for a long time. But in developing countries, they don't have broadband. You know what they have? Cell phones. And low-income people living with low and moderate income are actually more likely to access the internet through their cell phone than they are through broadband. And so I think hand in hand with pushing on broadband, we should actually be pushing the cell phone companies to give us more ubiquitous cell coverage, because that's what people can afford. I want us to think broadly about this, and not broadband is a single pipe that comes into a home and you pay for it. This is what, and then you have to pay for that, and then you have to have a computer. This is what people have. So we got to think about how to make sure people can get to everything they need on here.
And can I add to that I don't think, Matt, you talked about this, but one of the things that Bridge has done is recognize that not everyone has a phone, and to access Bridge, you need a phone. So, Matt, am I right that Bridge gives phones to people, cheap phones, so that people can access services?
In markets where we are partnered with the government.
Great.
We're also working on, hopefully, knock wood. Also, I've just found my cell phone. By the end of the first quarter, having kiosks.
Oh, great.
So, especially with sort of, a place where there's a high density of folks, who need to be able to use it, like a transportation center, or in a housing complex. Right.
Mike.
Oh, sorry. Using a kiosk, right, to be able to do it. So, it might not be as efficient, right, as like saying you can use it anywhere, but at least you'll still be able to use it the same locations that you would traditionally access. Sort of traditional transit.
Okay.
And if just one quick thing on that, Good and Cheap, we're actually partnered with an organization that distributes cell phones to folks who are lower income. It's part of a government program. It's the Lifeline program, and that's available anywhere. So there actually is a government program that ensures that if you are below a certain income, you can get a cell phone or a cell phone plan, sort of whatever you qualify for. And in some locations, the organization I work with, Access Wireless in California, they're actually partnered with Android and have started to be able to give out smartphones. So I think that's something that is coming, and I think we can hope that that program doesn't get changed. But that can be incredibly powerful, because when working with this organization, it means that, that can come with, like from my perspective, that can just come with Good and Cheap on it. It can come with Bridge apps on it. It can come already with all these things. And if the system itself works, and people can get cell service wherever they are, then that's incredibly powerful, and they have information wherever they are.
Wendy?
Just a real quick comment. In Springfield, I've heard of people getting track phones for free. People are standing out at the food stamp office, transitional assistance, and giving out track phones. So people are thinking about it already. It's just making the partnerships with folks that really can do that. And they're giving out free 500 minutes to start it. So
Great, okay. Gentleman down there in the yellow.
So a couple of things. First, that when we're talking about moving people and goods, it's not a new idea. At the same vehicle, And right now, the inner city buses do a lot. I remember when I was working in a bus station, we shipped human blood to hospitals. So it's the understanding is there. It's the reinventing of it in a local context that becomes very important. Talking about the subsidies that folks in Leiden Woods might need for transportation, we already subsidize for those who already have. Education, infrastructure. If you're commuting to Boston, we know where the roads are and who pays for it. So it's a matter, again, of priorities. And I applaud the people at the COG and others who are doing the work to try to figure out how to apply it for those in need in the county. And the last thing I wanted to say, we need decent jobs here, and we have a drug problem here. And one of the solutions to the problem is access to work. And it's more than just, it'd be nice if people could have enough money to pay their own way. It is a part of the cure for the opiate problem.
Pat Larson, and I live in Orange, and I've worked for years on the public transportation issue, and so my questions are a little bit specific. I was glad to see Linda talk about thinking outside the box, because that was part of my question before you said that, so I'll try and move on. You must have. Anyway, so I guess one of the questions I would have as people work on this issue and is how to sort of push for modified fixed route kinds of ideas, because in rural small towns, even to get people to work, fixed routes sometimes don't work, often don't work. So that's one question. Are there ways and I know about funding restraints, and so then I guess my other question has to do with regional transit authorities, which have these like boundaries that are like walls sometimes. And is there a way to sort of move that so it's more fluid and regional transit authorities sort of work together to think outside the box, have kind of some, not modified fixed routes? Those are two.
I agree with that, and I think, for the FRTA, we're one of 3 rural transit authorities in the state. We share that with Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket. We all know that they have a much different income situation in those populations, and they're also seasonal. We're also kind of at a disadvantage because we're between PVTA, who has a $40 million plus budget every year, and Montechusett, who I'm not exactly sure, but it's probably, that way. So for us to put our schedules together, we're always very mindful that we're making connections with Montechusett and with PVTA so that we can kind of have a more cohesive system that works together. So outside of the funding constraints, we do have to think outside of the box. We do have other programs that tie into the fixed route that other low-income elderly populations can certainly utilize, but there is a need. Like I said, we have 41 towns. Out of that, we have 10 towns that have some sort of fixed route service. And again, not all of them have a consistent service. We have routes that start from 5 in the morning that go till 8:50 at night. But we're not having routes that operate every hour on the hour. Sometimes we're missing connections. Like Linda said, we don't have weekend service, so to get people to viable food options, access to jobs, education, those sorts of things, there are huge gaps that we know that we have to fill. So we are trying. We have a transit advisory committee that meets every other month. We have a regular advisory board. We work very closely with the Council of Governments. We've been to Leiden Woods. We're trying to get out there as much as possible to find out what the needs and wants are. And one of those things we were able to do was to extend evening service this past August and expand the fixed routes a little bit more. Again, we're not seeing that people are utilizing what we put into play. So we do have to come up with something a little bit more creative, think outside of the boxes, but we work very closely with Montechusett, we work closely with PVTA, and we also share ideas with the other regional transit authorities within the state of Massachusetts.
Hi, I'm Heather Tower. I'm the director of the Council on Aging in Northfield, which does not have any bus routes. Our seniors do have the van. However, the problem we run into all the time is somebody has dialysis. There's 3 times a week. Somebody has chemo treatments. That could be 3 or 4 months every day. Somebody needs to get to PT. There's twice a week for a long period of time, and the van cannot help them. So this idea that Matt talked about would be so wonderful to get these people to those places. And I know there hasn't been a service in Northfield for a long time, but perhaps as we start thinking more green and people start thinking about how much it costs to run their cars, that we could come up with something innovative enough that we would pique people's interest and they would begin to use the public transportation more and thereby save a lot.
And we did do a study, 5-6 years ago, that fixed route is something that would be warranted in those areas. However, we've got to come up with Northfield and Bernardston to kind of come up with the funding. One thing I will say, that all of our vehicles have to be handicap accessible. They all have to have some sort of lift or ramp to help people with mobility issues. We're also limited in what we can purchase based on what the state allows us for funding for vehicles itself. So there are some restrictions, and again, it's going to take a community to come together and think outside of the box to come up with something that is based on people's ability to pay. You know, all of our bus routes, like I said, are $1.25. The senior buses are right around $1, $1.50. Again, those are cut in half depending on your income, ability to pay, and your age, and whether you're a student, and all of those things. So that being said, something like Bridge is very innovative, but when you're talking about cost and who's going to operate all of those services, coming up with $4 for a one-way trip, that's a bit tough.
But at the end of the day, I mean, and just to sort of set the stage, I mean, sort of the funding challenges, right, that sort of Tina has to deal with are just incredible, right? And just to respond to one of the earlier points of sort of saying, well, like, you know, we have to live within this box, right? But at the end of the day, I mean, you know, we've worked very closely with Secretary Fox and Vice President Biden, and, you know, in the course of 3 months, created a Mobility on Demand sandbox grant, right? That, you know, there was unfortunately no Western Mass applicants, but, you know, Vermont got, you know, a big grant for on-demand, you know, flex route rural transportation. So when we're talking about $4, I mean, in a place like Kansas City, for instance, where we are partnered with the government, you have to do an apples-to-apples comparison of saying the operating cost per vehicle hour, right, in most transit agencies is somewhere between $150 and $200, right? And, you know, all in with a flexible option, right, like Bridge to cover that same area, it's like $40, right? For sort of that same sort of unit basis. So all I'm saying here is that it actually requires us, the box can be changed. Governor Baker has been super clear about that, right? Like, Governor Baker and I disagree on very many issues, but Governor Baker has been incredibly clear, as he's demonstrated, the PVTA, the MBTA, and a bunch of others, of saying, define where the box doesn't work for you, let me know, and you know, they have incredible amounts of leverage with sort of the federal government, the FTA, to be able to do that. So I think really at the end of the day, it's sort of those folks and identifying those areas and those places of need and saying, what is the output, right? And let's try to create tools, right? It's you know, it's like you want to go build something, right? Like, figure out what you want to build, and then let's make sure that we have the tools to be able to do that. And I'd be incredibly excited. I think we would all, as we've said repeatedly over the past year, really be excited to co-create, you know, with Tina's team and sort of the whole region to see if there's some way we can change the box, you know, and ready and standing by for that. So anyway, I just wanted to clarify that.
Claire?
I think Linda wants to talk, and she knows way more than I do, but I want to say that it strikes me that when we're talking about healthcare and seniors, that there's a place for the hospitals to be at the table here. That now we know under the ACA there was a lot of requirements to think about healthy communities. Now that may all go away, but it still seems to me that when you're talking about seniors living in rural communities needing access to health care, we should have the partners in healthcare also be a part of that discussion. So that's just one observation. Second thing is, there was an election 2 weeks ago that we keep referring to, and it was momentous. But it was partly momentous when you look at the map because rural areas voted for the person who is now the president. So I think there's going to be money directed to rural areas, and just because this rural area didn't vote for this president doesn't mean we shouldn't be looking at what's available for rural areas come the next administration. There may be something there for us. We should take advantage of it, right? I think there's 2 rural counties, and no, we're the only fully rural county in Massachusetts. We should look at that.
Wow, can I just say that was so much more positive than I really don't think there's going to be more money to rural areas, and I don't think there's going to be more money, and that we have to recreate the box, because the box is going to be recreated for us, and we need to be proactive and figure out how we are going to manage that and for the betterment of our community.
And for any precedent, please, OTR. But we were heavily involved in the Clinton transition team, and now have offered those same services, as much as it like my skin like starts falling off, to the president-elect transition. And yes, the box will be recreated, and the agencies that maintain service will be those that play ball, right? And work, to recreate the box and prove that the output, right, is demonstrably better for the same input. And I don't want to say that that's like a Trumpism, right? It's because it's not. He's not smart enough. But sorry. But really, it's core economics, right? Like with a shrinking funding environment, it's be at the table or be on the menu, and by delivering more transportation or more food or more access or whatever for every single dollar that we have available to us, that puts us in the best position to weather whatever storm sort of comes. And I agree. I think there's a storm, right? But it doesn't change the fact that either way we need to keep being more efficient.
I know that I'm trying to be optimistic, but to quote President Clinton, the one that actually got elected, his phrase would, "You have to dance with those that brung you," and and who brought the new president to office, and we have to look for whatever minor edges we might be able to get out of that, and at the same time be able to change fundamentally what that box looks like. I agree with what Linda's saying. There's going to be some little pieces in there that we may be able to grab hold of, and we should try to grab them.
Absolutely. Michael.
Good morning. My name is Michael Lewis, and I am the program director for the Recover Project, which is a peer-to-peer program for people in recovery from the disease of addiction. I'm also a member of the Just Roots Board, and I'm very passionate about food justice and access to healthy foods for everybody. I also serve on the Franklin County Resource Network. I am on the subcommittee of the Policy Task Force. I work closely with the Opioid Task Force. We had a roundtable discussion with Senator Rosenberg a little over a week ago. And he was generous enough to say to us at the end of this conversation, with different entities and community members attending, that if we came up with a list of legislative asks and then sort of focused on the top 2 or 3 most pressing issues and offered a viable solution and got it to him within 60 days, he would bring that forth into this next round of legislation that's going to happen after the first year. So we have been putting together a working group. And I want to say, Matt, that you validate my thinking process, because we had our first meeting yesterday, and I brought up the fact that, because we were talking about transportation, which is a huge issue, it crosses so many sectors, of course, about creating and asking for legislation and funding for creating and working with the FRTA to create a van service that runs, counter to the bus routes, the established bus routes, and that reach out into all the various hill towns and outlying towns in Franklin County. So this idea of yours is right in step with the thinking that we're talking about. I have noticed in the work in the different sections of community that I'm doing that there's like 4 or 5 or 6 different entities, working groups of people working on this same thing. So I want to say that I have a card. I would love for a couple of different people from a couple of different groups to connect with me and become part of our working group so that we can create this legislative ask. the viable solution for it and get that turned in before Christmas so that Senator Rosenberg can run with that. I also want to say, Leanne, that you inspired more of my thinking around cooking and food access. We at the Recover Project have a kitchen, and every now and then one of my team members or some community members will come in and bring in food, and they'll just cook food for people in the space, whoever happens to be there. Because many of the people that come into our space are very poverty-stricken, or they're just starting all over again, and access to food is difficult. I have many people who walk in who are homeless. So I want to say, having been a head chef, I am willing to team up with anybody else who's interested in doing workshops out at Leiden Woods, over at Community Action, around cooking. If we don't stand up and do something, it's never going to get done.
I agree with that.
I've just got to say that.
I agree with that.
There is a lot of, hey, you know, this is huge, this is this, this is that. And I'm in these different groups and I'm hearing that, and I understand the fears, I understand it being overwhelming, but we're just talking about it and we're letting the fear and the overwhelming of the situation stop us from making a move, right? So I'm one of those people, those who know me, who would just say, hey, look, good, let's talk about it, let's go do it. Let's stop talking, let's go do. Have an idea, let's jump on it. So I'm just throwing out a couple of ideas. I would love for people to come connect with me and show up at our next working group.
Nancy, to Andy, and Michael, you just made this, this day successful.
I'm Andy Grant. I work with Just Roots, and we are the change we've been waiting for. I want to pick up on Claire's idea of the rural tax. Another way of looking at that is if we all stood up, why don't we actually do this? Everybody stand up for a second. And half of you sit down. Just figure it out. Half of you sit down. Here we go. Okay. So the ones who sat down are the food companies, Big Ag, and the transportation systems that have been subsidized by the federal government for decades. The ones that are standing up are the outlying areas, the rural communities. This is how it looks. You try to purchase local, fresh food that's nutrient dense, and it looks more expensive because the other food products have been subsidized by the federal government. Yes. You try to have transportation, and it looks more expensive because the other systems have been subsidized. The actual costs are much different than what we are trying to compete with. Thank you very much.
Okay. So my name is Emma. I live in Greenfield, and I'm speaking as a person who uses food stamps and has used food stamps for over 20 years. I may always use food stamps. It's not like a bridge to someplace else. It's a bridge for me to have the healthy, nutritious food that I eat, and I do use the Just Roots CSA, and I'm on the board at Greenfield's Market. And the out-of-the-box things are the things that I'm excited about hearing, because we who live in poverty know every day how to live outside the box of the box. Because, you know, those boxes that might go away, that terrifies me, because I'm on many kinds of assistance. And without any one of them, I would not have the life that I have. And how to do it? You don't have to make a phone call to know how much food stamps you have left. If you keep your receipts, you always know. They're in my wallet all the time. And that's how I know. And that's what makes the decision where I go to go shopping and what I'm going to buy, how much I have left in my balance. And the only issue I have in Franklin County, not just in Franklin County, everywhere I've gone to access using this, is attitude. And what I mean by that is even at our own farmer's market or at Trader Joe's, I've been challenged because something was wrong with the machine, and I've been blamed for that and told I don't know how much is in my account. I actually had the person recently at the farmer's market tell me that they had the power to tell me that it couldn't be possible that the machine was malfunctioning. It had to be that my balance wasn't what I thought it was, which it was. You know, we checked it, it was. But she said, we have the power to tell you how much you have in your account. And I just looked at her and I said, you know, that's actually a federal crime if I don't authorize that transaction. You know, I don't know what power vested in you you think you have to check my balance for me. And it was what I thought it was. Similarly, this is like maybe 15 years ago, I had to empty an entire cart of food at Trader Joe's, told publicly with a lot of people around that I was a troublemaker and all this other stuff, in a snowstorm, and had to go to Cornucopia to buy half the amount of food. You know, I have memorized in my head exactly what's on the sale flyer at Greenfields Market. I read them before they come out online so that I don't get something this month that's going on sale next month. You know, this is the reality. I'm college educated. I'm very fortunate. I have communication skills. I have a lot of street smart skills to use, you know? But this is what it really requires. And you can't tell by looking at someone, and you can't tell by talking to someone. And it's important. I lived in a place for 11 years that's very much like Leiden Woods. Section 8 got me out of there. You know, things that are shrinking already under the current administration. One last thing. This is called an Obama phone. That's what I have for a cell phone. It's free. It doesn't have apps, though. So I was excited to hear that you can actually have a program that actually gives out limited smartphones, because I was wondering how someone like me would access a service like that. It's the data plans that cost so much money.
And we're working with the federal government to make sure that everything and sort of the cellular access plans actually include the things that people need in the future, but it's the federal government.
Right, because like I have a refurbished iPhone at home, but I don't use it for a cell phone because I can't afford the monthly fee, see? So, you know, that's just how it is. The data plans are expensive. So when you said that, I thought, now that's exciting. You have to eliminate barriers, and we have to treat each other. The talking about respect that I heard from both of you, and dignity, and from some of the people here, it is so critical. And even those of us who think we know something are all able to, at any moment, say something that we don't realize is hurtful. You know, some of the people who said the hurtful things I have considered my friends. Some of them maybe still will be my friends if we can get through the thing they said, you know? But that's some of the reality. Thank you.
My name's Mary Bell. I'm from Bernardston. And, I'm from Bernardston. And we're talking here today, we want to think about solutions and thinking outside the box. And as far as legislation, we think about food and food access. There's a lot of food today that's actually wasted. And it's wasted because we don't have proper education as far as when food needs to be thrown away, whether it's expiration dates, things of this nature. And I did a survey in this area of Franklin County of over 200 people, and farmers, restaurants, grocery stores, and found that the large majority, like 88%, did not know about the Bill Emerson Food Donation Act. And this legislation act allows for the donation of food as long as it is donated with wholesome food is donated when someone has knows that it is being taken care of properly. And we were talking at our table earlier about, well, what's going to happen to the excess fruit that was there? And if we know that if somebody is there distributing the food instead of people taking their own food, then that food could be donated. And so part of the thing that we need to also consider is that wasted food is wasted resources. We're wasting our land. We think about the legislation, we'll think about 50-60, having 50% more produce grown locally by the year 2060. But yet, how can we look at that if we also have so much wasted food in the process? So as a community, looking and seeing what are we wasting, what kind of education do we need locally to be able to help our citizens to be able to make the best of the food and stretch their money as best they can and get the most out of their food, and feeding their neighbors as well. So looking outside the box, the next time we go to throw something away, to think, well, what can I make with this? Can I put a little bit of this in the refrigerator or in the freezer and make a soup with it later? You know, are there ways that I can help my neighbor? So thinking outside the box and being aware of current legislation such as the Bill Emerson Food Donation Act can really go a long way as far as thinking outside the box.
Hello, my name is Kydra Jacobs, and I will be leading the workshop of Growing Pains this afternoon. And I kind of want to start a bit of that right now, because I'm feeling a bit of privilege coming from this room, and I feel this a lot when I come into these types of situations, is I know that there are people here that want to help people in certain situations, and I want to thank Abdul, for one, for bringing to light, and Becky, because Becky works with my family at Oak Courts. And what I really was feeling from you is the frustration of trying to help people who don't really know that they need the help that's really here. And we have a lot of help in this room. I feel that there are a lot of people here that want to help, but you're dealing with people who really don't even know that they need the help. I live in subsidized housing. I have been in the shelter program. I have used this program the way that it was supposed to be used. I was in the shelter program for 3 months. I know people who have been in the shelter program for 3 years, living in a hotel room, 1 hotel room, 5 kids, for 3 years. And so this is a type of poverty that you don't know. And I know that some of you may have gone home and not had what you wanted to eat, or not been able to sleep where you wanted to sleep, but these are people who literally had to cook in a microwave for 3 years. And so it's like, now that they're living in subsidized housing, they don't want jobs. Like, I have people telling me that they don't want to get a job because their rent will go from $49 to $349. And it happened to me twice in 1 year. They raised my rent from $49 to $217 to $342. And I do that faithfully. I will pay that rent faithfully because I want to get out of a system that was put in place to keep me there. Everybody needs to know that this is not something that is just there because people don't want to help themselves. This is a process that has been put in place to make sure that we stay there. People don't want to get education because they know that it's going to put them at a disadvantage somehow. You people know how to pay your rent. You know how to pay your bills. You know how to keep a roof over your head. These are people who have consistently lost everything. And they restart, and they restart, and they restart. But I'm looking at people, me and my mother, we live in the same place. And I don't know if that hits you as hard as it hits me. But my mother is 50 years old, and we're both paying, I pay more rent than she does because she doesn't work. She's living on a fixed income. She doesn't have a driver's license. We are living the same lifestyle, and she's 50 and I'm 28. So it's like when you're thinking about the way that you want to progress or the way that you want your children to progress, understand the level of poverty that we're dealing with here. And it's not just hungry at nighttime. This is people who don't even know that they are in this type of poverty and will stay in this type of poverty. People who have been paying $37 for rent for 10 years, and they don't want anything better. They don't need anything better. So what I'm asking you is, if you really want to help people, it can't be in a system where it's like, broke people don't like you. I just want to tell you that. Homeless people don't like you. They don't want to see white privilege coming into their homes and trying to tell them what they need to do with themselves. So if you really want somebody who's going to get down to their level, then you need to, first of all, find someone inside of their own living. Find someone on their level. Educate that person. Pay that person so that they can go in and talk to someone. I talk about reparations, and not on a level of 40 acres and a mule. I talk about it on a level of, let's get to an even playing field. Let's start there. Do you have a high school education? Do you have a college education? Do you have a driver's license? These are things we should be asking people just so that they can get to a common level of living. Instead of just saying, okay, we need to get somebody a job, do they have the skills to get a job? My brother has worked at Greenfields Market for 5 years. He does not have a high school diploma. He doesn't. So if he left Greenfields Market tomorrow, he couldn't go anywhere else. So we need to get to that type of level of, does everybody have the same thing so that they can live a regular life? And so that's where we should start. Thank you.
So, I mean, I wrote a lot about that. I mean, like, because I think, you know, Emma,
Behind
also to your
Jessica.
point too, I think
Behind Jessica.
I think people sort of look at others and sort of assume, you know, by the way, I've been on those same programs, right? And that's why I get like viscerally angry, like when some people talk about like, oh, tech bro with like his privilege, like with a bus company for rich people, right? Like, what do you know about me? What do you like? It's ridiculous.
The system is rigged towards you. You're still a white male. So she's asking you to own that.
But hold on, let me finish. So, but what I am saying here is the fact that, especially when we talk about you know, how to innovate, right, and how to sort of think outside the box, we view a lot of these things as social services. We view public transportation as a social service. And as long as we view public transportation as a social service, that is the box in which we will keep it, and we will keep everyone who uses it every single day. It's their own separate stadium while we have our brand new one with nice seats, you know, nice lighting and big screen TVs. So we get it all the time. How dare you try to think about public transit in sort of a different way? And I hear it. It's coming from a good place. When you look at sort of some of the folks who are most vociferous about it, they're typically relatively well-off white guys who are speaking for Hispanic and black folks who are systemically disenfranchised by the system. In Kansas City, our program, right, connects two sides of the city, right, across Troost Avenue, which goes north and south. One side, rich and white, other side, poor and black, right? Never before was there any cross connection because the transit system was designed to, you know, essentially institutionalize that racism, right? So we're talking about privilege, right? And okay. Well, all right, so anyway, we're having a dialogue. So what I'm saying here is that like this is why this is so exciting here, because I think this group is just so awesome in saying like, let's actually look at the output, right? Let's look at, you know, what we need. Like we need to not have folks walking at 9 p.m. at night with their 5-year-old kid getting back, I'm sorry, Linden Village? Leidenwood. To Leidenwood. Like, we can solve that problem, right? So that, you know, sort of, I don't know, some sort of a collaboration towards like actual pragmatic solution.
What I want everyone to know is that if people don't know that these things are out here and
Yeah.
have a way of getting to people who truly need this, they're going to continue to walk home at 9 o'clock at night.
That's right.
And so it's like we need people more like me, who look like them, who feel like them, who know their problems, to go inside of their homes and sit down and say, what is it that you need? And then that person come out of that situation and go to you all and say, this person here at this part right here needs this.
Coffee chats.
We'll go from here and you spread out and you go from there and you find out what everybody else needs from there. And it can't just be on, we can't just do it as an organization or as regular human being people, as you. Find one person, go into their home, ask them what they need, and then we go from there and say, hey, well, there's this program over here that we can help you with. Let me help you get there. Okay, so you have a doctor's appointment. Let me help you. Oh, so let me find you a closer doctor's office or something like that. Let's get to a human base.
Tools, right, rather than condescending master plan solutions.
Yes, it's not even about being condescending. It's you people are not coming off as condescending, but the whole entire tone of this is condescending because you have. I know that Becky has put it out there to people because my mom's going to come, but she went to the hospital this morning, and I'm sure Bill put it out there to people to come to this event. But the way that it comes off is just like, so you want me to sit in a room full of rich white people, and I don't. I'm not saying that any of you are rich, but it's the way that it feels coming into a situation like this. Because I come into a situation like this every single day.
You know what? I think that's fair. I think you're making a very fair point.
Absolutely.
And I think you're right. You know, we have, and you're talking about something that is happening across this country that we don't know how to talk to each other. right? And so
And we assume.
we have to
assume,
and we
assume.
yeah. And I think I agree with you. I think we do have to figure this out. I do want to respond to something you said that I think has really touched my heart in a way when you talked about the subsidized rent and so on. And I live in a subsidized housing. Do you know the federal government gives me money back because of my mortgage? The biggest single subsidy, housing subsidy in the country is the mortgage write-off. And we act as if, those of us who've been fortunate enough to be able to buy something, as if we deserve it. Well, if I deserve it, you deserve it. Do you know what I'm saying?
And I am searching for housing. And because I already live inside of housing, because the only landlord that I have is the housing agent.
Yep.
Nobody else will take my Section 8
And this-
because of the fear of a Section 8 voucher. So it's like people are put in these situations and you're handed something like a Section 8 voucher,
Right.
and you can't even use it. So you're sitting here and they're dangling it in front of you, and you can't even hold on to something like that. So it's like we're kept here, we are left here,
And-
what do
And you're blamed for not using it.
Exactly. We're called lazy, or we're inefficient in what we've been given, or we don't take advantage of what we've been given. And I told you all, I started in the shelter system. I was in a hotel. I went from a hotel to a full-on family shelter. I went from a family shelter to a full-on institution of houses that were bought by the shelter system. And then from there, I got my apartment. And so it's like, I did everything right, and now I have Section 8, and you're telling me I can't even get housing because people won't take a Section 8 voucher. And so it's like, if I'm doing everything, and I have everything lined up, what am I doing wrong? Why am I still in the same spot?
You know,
You're telling me that I need to just do stuff, and that there's stuff out there for me to do, and I've done it all. I've done it all.
You've done it all, and it's because we have created a system in this country, and I agree with you, that systemically is holding people to where they are. And
We need to step away from the government. If anything has proven to us right
No.
now, we need to step away from the government. We need to get on a human level of what do you need? What do you need? What can I do for you as my neighbor, as my human compartment, as you, as the person that I see on a daily basis? What do you need? Forget about what you can get from the government. Forget about what you can get from a system. What is it that we can do as human beings to help other human beings? And it can't be under the name of somebody else. It just needs to be under the name of you, as people.
I'm going to have to think about that. You know why I'm going to have to think about that? Because I believe that self-governance is one of the things that makes us, is a way to connect us. And the way we pay for those things that we value is by pooling our money together in the form of taxes to do things like pay for Section 8s and to pay for transportation and to pay for food for people. And I don't think that's a bad thing. And I'm not willing to say I'm going to step away from using government to make us a more egalitarian people. So you and I want to keep talking to you because you have ideas that challenge me and make me think again about the things I value, but I'm not willing to step away.
I don't mean step away on a level of let's just become our own little unit here. What I'm saying is stop relying on the government so much because we can't. It is shown us that we can't rely on it. So what I'm saying is, yes, we have
Feels like
public
what you're
transportation. Where public transportation lacks, why can't we just call our neighbor? Why can't somebody just have a tree, you know, like how you have in daycares where it's like somebody's sick, do you want to just come pick up little Jimmy? Why can't we just have a tree of people where it's like, okay, you have to be at work at 6, call this person at 5:15, and they will come and pick you up. And why is it just that? That's just common neighborhood stuff.
And that might be part of the solution that gets worked out this afternoon, right? I mean, that's part of the discussion, right?
That is part of the discussion. Abdul, do you want to say anything, or you've been trying to say something?
Yes.
And then I'm going to close it down because it's time for
I'm
lunch.
an RC, and I'm working with families that are really in so many needs that I looked at all these solutions and thought that people are sharing and turn the services around. Because we're thinking we have to go to the services. A lot of the thinking process is, yes, they're available and transportation will take us there. And my job, the 40 hours that I'm using, 45 of them are used to providing services on site. It takes away a lot of transportation needs. It takes away dependability on getting one person point A to point B. I'm looking into very close partnerships. It's people who can actually turn around and provide the services on site. Because there's so many aspects of that is taken away, and so many aspects of the poverty that could be addressed if you go and live and work and get to know where people are living and really working with them outward, like you're preparing them so they can take that responsibility to own the situation and then act on it. I have approached several partners to mention that we want that human touch. When you really come to a coffee chat and look at somebody in the eyes and understand what's going on around the kitchen table at nighttime, when you have a situation where it's involved health issues, money issues, personal management, housekeeping, just it doesn't stop. And Lightenwood currently is going to be rebuilt, as I said. You will have a roof and a brand new house that you're gonna move in. Some of the tenants just went in and sit and look at the brand new walls right after they moved in. What do I do next? You have a kitchen, you have a food pantry, you have a youth services, you have a community garden. The tools are there. The tools are right there for people to use and then address all the issues that we took from top here down to the bottom. Turn it upside down, you're in the box, move it around. Bring people together. That's why when we do, for example, the common meal share with Just Root with our tenants, it's a meal, but it's also talking about diet. And the food book, it's talking about how to rework things, how to look at things from different point of view, and then working slowly our way out to the system. So very complex, but I would agree with, what's your name, please? Hydra, that you have to try to really turn the box around to go to the sources of the problem and get it going and working in there. Not outward to the services place where the information is taken and returned back to a different reality to work with it. As RSC, I advocate for the tenant, and they know that I would not be disclosing certain type of information. But I also look at the system and say, there's no way I could really change this system unless I invite the system in to come and look into what is happening. Thank you.
I would like to thank the panel and our speakers. I think we have the beginning of some very fruitful conversations. And it's just the beginning, because there's obviously a lot of work to be done among them, trying to figure out what those boxes look like and how they have to, and what kind of holes we have to punch into them. So I am pleased that you're all here. Lunch is just about ready. We'll be convening back here at about 12:45 when Erica Wheeler will try to pull this together into some kind of musical response. And so thank you very much. Please enjoy the meal, and we'll see you at 12:45.
And by the way, guys, I'm looking at everyone looking super sad and depressed right now. No, which is fine and probably good, right? But now do something, right? Let's figure it out. So yeah, no down faces. Think about how we do it.